welcome. You're watching QTV and you're watching The Week in Review. I'm your host, Adi Darami, and I have with me my co-host, Mamadou Mboj. Mr. Mboj, as ever, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Adi. Glad to be here.
Thank you, and I'm always glad that you're here. Now, if you are tuning in for the first time, or even if you're watching this as a regular viewer, you will know that what we do is we go through 10 big stories from the week, and we discuss them in some detail. We play a clip from them. You'll see how it works soon. President Barrow receives ambulances. A fact-check portal has been launched. Security training for the media around elections, and menstrual education for young women, particular one. And of course, the VVIP lounge at the airport is about to be constructed. Anyway, enough of those snippets about some of the stories. Let's get cracking. The first story is actually the first one I mentioned. Some ambulances have been received by President Barrow, and they've been distributed to various parts of the country. Have a look at this clip.
It's an innovative idea. I don't think you can find it anywhere, maybe in Africa. And this is the first time in the history of the Gambia that we are doing such a thing in this country. These ambulances will help the people. It will facilitate them to go to the health facilities. Because if somebody is sick, the person needs help. And I think these ambulances will help the communities.
In a swift response to requests for buses from students of the Mansakongo School of Enrolled Community Health Nurses and Midwives and Bansang's School of Enrolled Nurses, the President presents buses to each of these schools. A 30-seater Costa minibus and a dual cabin pickup for Mansakongo and Bansang School of Enrolled Nurses, provided with 15 and 16-seater minibuses to help address the students' transport challenges.
There you saw His Excellency the President talking about it. I don't want to pick a fight with my president, but there are other African countries that have similar, Kenya, Uganda. But anyway, it's a great one for the Gambia. And Mr. Mboj, I'm somebody, I always think, the cliche about healthy nation, wealthy nation, and so on. A good thing, surely, that more resources are being poured into our healthcare service.
Oh, absolutely, and this is the second consignment, isn't it?
Sure.
2025. So
we've got 45, and they're brand new, and they're not reconditioned or anything. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we'll distribute, and fantastic for the Mansakongo and Bansang, the schools of enrolled nurses, having all these facilities. Oh yes, nobody can ever doubt that. But earlier when he said these buses will help, these buses will do, these ambulances will do this, will do that. Yes, but.
yeah, well, you might want to do the but, so I might have my own in a minute, but what's your but?
Service delivery is multidimensional.
Indeed.
The last time we talked about it, we discussed it in the office, and one of the reporters said, yeah, and very soon you'll have the driver using, or at least one of them using this ambulance is going to Ngente, christening ceremonies and that sort of thing. Or sooner or later they'll tell you that we've got no fuel. So we know what the problems are.
Sure.
This is absolutely a fantastic idea.
Yeah.
But again, service delivery is a slightly different thing. Building the roads, fantastic, because you need these ambulances to be able to go from A to B. Yeah. Even having street names, it facilitates their response time and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So we have to look at all the stuff as well, revolving around.
I'm glad you mentioned it, because the point I was going to make is about how multidimensional this should be. These things cannot stand alone. You mentioned street names. It's all well having ambulances, and then if people have the same difficulty being directed to where there's an emergency, then what's the point? So to me, there needs to be, we talk about holistic approach. But also one of the things that I particularly worry about, because I've seen it in other countries and I've seen it here too, is that you have these gleaming new buses, and then in 6 months or a year's time, because there isn't a kind of I don't know whether there is, but there should be a kind of central maintenance thing where somebody who's received one of these ambulances can call and say, oh, there's a problem with that ambulance. Can you send the mechanics or the engineers to come and look at it? Is there such a thing? I don't know, but that's what we need to have alongside the ambulances, surely.
Well, I know that, for instance, way back they probably still have it. The police, for instance, had the main maintenance places, you know, so that they can maintenance their vehicles and stuff. So anyone would sort of imagine that in government there would be
we used to have something called PWD.
Garage.
Did they have Public Works Department? And something left to us by the colonials. It existed for a while, and then in Sierra Leone I'm talking about, and then it kind of faded away. Where it was that sort of thing, you know, if something belonged to a government, a ministry or government department, it would be sent there for repairs and then put back on the road. We need to bring that back, surely.
Oh, big time,
or do we have it?
But this is it. I mean, yes, as you mentioned earlier, sooner or later, the maintenance, the sustainability bit, if it is not maintenance, it will be by parts.
Yeah, quite.
You know, we need to buy new parts. How long would it take? Or
right.
Fuel, there's an emergency. Oh, look, we don't have any fuel. Sure. Maybe somebody has stolen it. I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. So this is really what our problem is, I think. Yeah. I think, in fact, I've been bold to say that our problem is not necessarily government. If you know what I mean. Government is a product of us. So it might give us sort of like the scapegoat, but I'm beginning to realize that, oh, we're in a trap. For a very long, I thought, you know, like most people, that government is government that. But I begin to see that, take any government institution, take any or even public agencies, public institutions. Take, for instance, call any low-level mechanic to come and do stuff.
Quite.
It's something that you need to do.
Sure.
So everywhere you touch, we've got these attitudes where if you don't spend money, you're not going to get the public service.
Sure.
Somebody the other day said when to change his ID card. Well, it should be very simple.
Yeah.
They keep on sending him back and forth all the time.
Sure.
He said, because I refuse to give something.
Sure.
Somebody else can just go and give whatever, then you can have it.
Yeah.
So these are the attitudes,
even
in the context of these ambulances, how we might afterwards, you know, abuse them, not use them the proper way and stuff like that. Then sooner or later it wouldn't be sustainable. Sure. We've seen these problems, and it's really...
Let's hope it's not the case with this, because as Mr. Mboch said, this is quite important, it's critical, and let's hope, you know, every time these things are delivered, the people receiving them always say the same words, we will take good care of this, but we've seen that many times that doesn't happen. Let's not hope that that's not the case with these ambulances. So thanks for that, Mr. Mboch. Now on to something else, not something that's already existing, but something that's on its way. What am I talking about? The VVIP lounge at our international airport. Have a look.
RSK will construct an independent airport terminal which will include presidential lounge, press rooms, protocol offices, security offices, parking lots for the exclusive use of passengers arriving and departing the presidential lounge, and roads linking the lounge to the aircraft apron. The construction will be supervised by the Netherlands Airport Consultants, NACO. Fansu Bojang, Director General of the Gambia Civil Aviation Authority, said when completed, the construction work will uplift the airport's image and standards in line with international protocols and high-level reception requirements.
The new presidential lounge is designed to be used for both presidential movements as well as important guests and personalities of government. This will ensure that the lounge is functional at all times, thereby maximizing the facilities.
VVIP lounge at the airport, part of the infrastructure obviously for the OIC, but I think it's been said from the start, I mean, once this infrastructure is delivered, it's beyond the summit, and it's, again, sustainability questions come in, but nonetheless, the airport has just had an upgrade, and now it's about to get yet another with the VVIP lounge. I'm sure you're used to sitting in VVIP lounges, Mr. Mboch, as you travel the world. I've done it once, I'll say. Yes, I'm not sure I have time to tell you when, but I've done it once, and it was by mistake. Yes,
I'm not too much into that sort of talk,
yeah.
that sort of thing, VVIP. In fact,
Very
I sort of lingered there for a while. Was that very, very important person. But anyway, they're going to have their exclusive. It is that sort of conference. It is that sort of gathering, I suppose. So they're going to have their own exclusive bit.
So the ones who are ministers coming, dignitaries who are coming, heads of state, obviously, including the ones who are coming for the OIC, they don't have to mix with ordinary people.
They don't have to mix, absolutely. Their own landing terminal, I've heard something like that. And that walkway, as it were, from the conference centers and wherever to, as I said, the airport apron, where the aircrafts are. Where they land, where they're parked.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
So yes, I mean, it is a sort. So
I mean, the reason I welcome it is because we have this beautiful new conference center, the Sadauda Kairaba Conference Center, and if we want to start hosting other conferences and summits beyond the likes of the OIC, then the world we live in, you need something like a VVIP. You and I might not, and that's where the use of it might come in, and the usefulness of it would come in. It's not for, you and I traveling on, economy flights from here to Sierra Leone or here to London, but it's for the future. And as I said, if we have something like the conference center and we want to sell it as a destination for people to hold events, conferences, seminars, expos, then we need a VVIP lounge.
Oh, absolutely. There's no denying that one sees that.
Sure.
And of course, so afterwards, how what dividend we reap from it will depend on how we manage it. Sure. And as we said before, it's not simply that. It also depends on other things.
Indeed.
The energy bit, how expensive would it be? Energy was,
and when you have all these VIPs come in, or these VVIPs come in, you need a certain number of vehicles to take them to and from, all of that fleet of vehicles. So there's a lot more than just the structure of the lounge itself. So, we're kind of getting into something that let's hope we can sustain.
Yes, absolutely, because it depends on the wider dynamic of the economy to make your country attractive.
Sure.
It's not simply the center. Yes, that counts, but there are many boxes to tick.
Yeah, quite, indeed. So on that one, again, we wish it well. And if my accidental VVIP lounge, I happened to be in America for Barack Obama's inauguration. I was leaving, and the people at the airport mistook me for Akon's brother. And they said, "Why are you not in VVIP with your brother?" And I said, "What the hell are you talking about?" And they said, "Akon, of course." I ended up being upgraded. So there you go. Purely by accident. But enough of that. Now on to something that we've covered quite a lot on QTV. And I've always been impressed, and I've followed the progress of this. This project has now ended. And it seems to have been quite a success, although time will tell. What am I talking about? This time I'm talking about Make It in the Gambia, TechIFI. Have a look.
1,268 youths have undergone 6 to 9 months training. More than 1,000 young entrepreneurs have received a grant or a startup kit, and 228 established youth-led enterprises have expanded through their businesses and created an average of 2 new jobs each.
They say all good things must come to an end, all good things must come to an end, and TechIFI has come to the end of its term. And again, sustainability. But the people we spoke to for that story tell us that they've put in place things to monitor what happens with these young people. They haven't just trained them and then abandoned them. And that's what we need, surely.
That is exactly the key, to see really the impact, the effect, the longer term, deep-rooted effect. Not that simply after you decamped, after you've gone.
You tick a few boxes.
You tick a few boxes and then afterwards it will collapse. So yes, it's fantastic, and we need more of these, isn't it? We need hundreds of them all over the place to be doing these things, and then with a view to sort of making it sustainable, as it were. So we will see what happens. There's a lot of emphasis now on entrepreneurship training and the like. But we also know that to be successful in entrepreneurship, one suspects that it takes more of character than knowing this is what we do already.
Sure.
A lot of entrepreneurs will fail. So this is my fear. We are raising so much hope.
Sure.
You know, you're giving them startups, which is fantastic.
Sure.
But what happens 3, 4 years, 5 years down the line? We know that for most SMEs, they tend to fold within 3 years.
I worked
so I'm
at
really very scared about
I
this.
worked at the insolvency service in in England, and I could reel off the percentage figures. It's huge, the number that fail. And the reason we want this to succeed is because of what it's all about. It's about young people. We're trying to inspire them. The whole make it here. Say you don't have to take these risky backway journeys. You can start a business here. You can be successful. Other young people have done it. But that is the danger, Mr. Mboj, what you've just mentioned. The failure rate is high normally. That's just the way of the world. And how do you then get these people back up on their feet and say, look, Mr. XYZ is now a multimillionaire, but he had 2 or 3 company failures before he made it. How do we do that bit?
Well, absolutely, and even during the recruitment, how do I recruit? We should target better. You know what I mean? I have a suspicion that a lot of people are going into it not because they really want to be entrepreneurs, or do they have the character? And these things actually matter. Studies have shown this.
Yeah.
What IQ, as it were, contributes to financial or business success is not that high, actually, we are told. It depends on your character.
Sure.
all the time. Yeah. I'm not a I do not spend too much. I'm quite thrifty.
But apparently some of the criteria for choosing people was that you were questioned about the viability of what it is you wanted to get into. It's not just, oh, I'm doing this and therefore I want the kit, I want the money, or whatever it is. How viable is it? How sustainable, that word again. Based on, it might be where your business is based. Do you get a lot of traffic? The type of business you run, are you going to be in competition with lots of others? So apparently all of these things were taken, because I went into some detail and I was meant to do some work with them. Unfortunately, it fell through about 1.5 years ago. And so I read up on some of the things, and they seem to have done a lot of homework before they kind of brought into the project. We talked, our colleague Jennifer Sonko, they're talking about 1,268. And for the businesses that have been created, each of them have created at least 2 jobs, which is quite decent and quite high. But that scrutiny of, no such thing as a guaranteed success.
Absolutely. For me, maybe I would have first gone for, what have you done? Only entrepreneurial people, whether they have money or not, we see them all the time.
Right.
They will come and buy this from you, go and sell it over there. You see them doing that sort of thing. So what have you done?
I remember a Nigerian guy that I interviewed in London, who he started his entrepreneurship he was at college, and he realized that he could mimic songs of the day and put it on his phone as a ringtone. And so he started a company called R&B Ringtones, and he was about 19 or 20, and he sold it for £3 million. And he became a kind of serial entrepreneur after that. He went into all kinds of other businesses, and he's still, doing quite well.
I spoke to somebody who attended one of these workshops about entrepreneurs and kids, an English person, and the person said to me, why don't you see people who are already doing it?
Yeah, quite.
You support them. That's what you do.
And
there
take
are
them
many,
to the next level.
Yes, and we know that there are many entrepreneurial people here. They don't have much money, but this is what I mean by the entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah. Well, apparently some of the ones who got the stuff were like they had a hairdressing, or they had a car mechanic, or something, electrician, and so on, and they gave them the extra kit to actually help them take their business to so some of them were like that. They weren't all starters from ground zero, as it were.
Absolutely. So this is it, yes, and it's fantastic. The reason why I sort of tend to emphasize on the fact that with business and success, it takes more of character than anything else. So have the right temperament.
Yes.
To know how to save money. You will always make sure that what is coming in is more than what is going out.
Sure.
You do find that some people really cannot do that.
Sure.
Cannot really manage a business.
People with PhDs
People
and
with
masters.
PhDs and masters,
Sure.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it is important to cultivate,
Yes.
the right stuff, qualities
Yeah, quite.
that
Because,
would make it
and you mentioned
succeed.
Mohamed Jah, I mean, he's quite visionary, and you look now, you don't get to the stage of owning this number of companies just by, he's always had a vision of looking for something else to expand into, something else to do, and they've all been successful.
Never studied entrepreneurship.
Quite.
Never did any of these courses.
Sure.
Did engineering
Yeah,
at university.
quite.
You see it all
At
over
Farabe
the
College,
place.
by the way.
Farabe College. So I've
Yeah.
seen this. We've seen this all over the place.
Sure.
So that is why I think that these programs, these entrepreneurship programs, should be subtler
Yeah.
in style.
Yeah.
Don't try to force these people. There's so much pressure now for one to become an entrepreneur. One to become an entrepreneur. This
Not
thing is
everybody has it.
integrated. Not everybody really has it. You could do it yourself. So little wonder that a lot of them, you'll go on 2-3 years and you fail.
Sure.
So that's
But
all.
nonetheless, for the ones who've done it, we wish them luck and all the best. Now, something that's close to, I think, both mine and Mr. Mboje's heart, fact-checking. I spend a lot of my time on social media actually correcting rubbish news that friends send. Even today, before I came in to do this program, I said to somebody, have you fact-checked that thing you just circulated in the WhatsApp group? Well, here in the Gambia, who knows, our problems in that region might be about to be solved. Have a look.
Through the United Nations Peace Building Fund, as part of its initiative to debunk fake news, misinformation and disinformation. FactCheck Gambia is the country's first and so far only indigenous independent digital fact-checking platform. The platform is aimed at curbing the spread of misinformation and disinformation on both traditional and social media by targeting and correcting false and misleading claims or statements. Ibrahim Silla, the Gambia's information minister, said the initiative is timely and apt as it will strengthen the country's democratic process. He went on to denounce all forms of fake news, misinformation and disinformation.
Let me assure you that the government of the Gambia, through the Ministry of Information and Communication Infrastructure, my ministry, highly welcomes this initiative, and we would like to assure you that we will give you maximal support to this initiative to ensure that your work is made easier in terms of access to officials and also, public, information that will help you counter some of these fact checks, fake information out there.
Sometimes we watch a story and I smile. This is a huge task. One of the reasons I'm smiling is the minister's offer there to help provide information that people want and need. Well, that will be a first, because anybody watching this, how difficult it is to get information out of government departments. But that's another topic and for another day. Fact-checking. Majak are going to be running this, Mr. Mboje. This is a mammoth task, surely.
Oh, absolutely. I think we've sort of missed the point. The cynicism today really questions whether there's anything called fact.
That's it. You had a president talking about alternative facts. There's no such thing. Something's either a fact or it's not. There's not an alternative fact. And yet, that's the world we live in. So, for a website to kind of set up and say, you can come on here and you can fact check stuff, it's quite a big task that they're trying to take on.
Yes, it's not going to work. All you're going to give me is just a rival narrative of whatever we're talking about. Sure. People are cynical beyond all of that. We are told that we have this, what do you call it, confirmation bias?
Yeah.
So whatever information you give me, I'll filter it through, my values, my beliefs. So I'll say, oh, look, this is not true. If it doesn't chime in with that, it's not true. If it does, I say, fantastic.
I'll give you the perfect example that I looked up just before we came on air. And this is the whole thing about, them doing surveys of people who were Donald Trump supporters. Still, 70, 80%, as high as that, still think he won, of his supporters, think he won the last election. The facts of the figures cast are there for the world and himself to see. And yet, they don't believe that he lost.
Right now, I think fact is an endangered species. Yeah. We're talking about endangered species all over the place. Sure. So this is really what the issue is. For me, as how I would approach these things, is to understand that barring the slanderous, libelous stuff, we've got the law to take care of that. Yes. Sure. Then anywhere else, I have to be tolerant. I think that's the crux of the matter. People will always say stuff that I do not like, that is not favorable to me, or even they are lying, and there are all sorts of things that's going on. We are in that space now. We are in that space. To think that I can create a platform where I can give you the objective facts, out there, unblemished, absolutely true. Not many people will take it seriously.
Well,
that is your problem.
I'll tell you how in that space we are, as you put it, COVID. I have friends here, intelligent friends, who tell me that all the stuff that the facts and the figures and the statistics that the government are putting out about COVID, up to the minute I'm speaking to you, Mr. Mboj, they believe it's all fakery to get medicines, to get drugs, to get resources like ambulances. They don't believe it. Now, if you don't believe it coming from your government, what makes you think somebody's going to go to a website and believe what is on there?
I've got my own anecdote. The other day, somebody said to me, hey, look, how come we don't get the updates, the COVID infections, the updates anymore? Exactly. We do have them, watching. He said, but on radio, I listen to radio all the time, but I don't hear it. Oh, I know why. He said, because the funds have stopped coming. And I just couldn't continue the discussion. I said, hey, look, I am not a cynical person. Please just, bye-bye. I just left because I wouldn't know what to say, stuff like that. It's not about the facts.
It's no longer about the facts. We now live in an area, and this is global. It's not just
global. Exactly.
It's a global phenomenon. And honestly, I wish them well, but they've got a really, really tough task on their hands. Now on to our fifth story. If you've been living on Mars, then you won't know that Gambia is going to have presidential elections. And for the media, this is something that's quite important, not just in telling the story, but also in staying safe. Have a look at this clip.
The GPU has established a safety hotline for monitoring attacks on the media during the electioning process. The establishment of this hotline is prompted by the lack of proper records on violations of media rights during elections in the Gambia. With the hotline, the GPU seeks to engage in real-time monitoring and documentations of attacks on the media and journalists. After the elections, the GPU will publish a report of the violations and use it as evidence to campaign and advocate for adjustments on laws and practices. The GPU has...
I'm being quite naughty, really, with that particular clip, because I watched the story when we broadcast it. Talks about they will monitor, they will write a report on violations, and I thought, supposing the elections come and they pass and there are no violations and no attacks on the media, what on earth are they going to write about? In the current climate, Mr. Mboj, are you aware in the Gambia of journalists being particularly subject to physical attacks, threats, and so on? You use the phrase, we're in that space. Are we in that space?
Not so much. We've had a few where journalists were manhandled.
Yes, that's right. We've seen some of the footage where people have taken footage of journalists being manhandled.
But I'm not sure whether it's so widespread that it becomes alarming.
Yeah,
I don't like talking ourselves into a situation
that's
where
what
the
I was getting
situation
at.
doesn't exist. So let's try to have a realistic appraisal, retain some sanity when we're talking about this, and be journalists, not activists, which is really what the problem is. So that is it. But it's a good training, and we should be prepared for that.
Well, I was going to come to that, because you and I might be, people might watch it there, oh, these guys, old guys, they're being complacent. You prepare for the worst and hope for the best, as they say. So we're not going to sit back and say, oh, we don't need the training, because there haven't been that many serious attacks on journalists. But train just in case there is, and also have the system that they're talking about, GPU, where there's a number you can call to report what has happened, and they will follow it up. So yes, I have to agree with you there that it's about, you know, you train expecting the worst, but you hope for the best.
Yes, because we know the tension.
Yeah, sure.
Really, the fault lines, as where the battlegrounds.
Yeah.
So we know that. And if we're honest with ourselves, there might be certain potential flashpoints.
Indeed, you get that. You
yes,
get that. Yes.
That's it. So it is up to the journalists when we go out to cover. We become aware of local dynamics that will allow us to be safe and the like. So it is important that we're doing this given our situation so that we can report as honestly as possible.
And without fear.
And without fear and the like. And here I think that the security forces will be very important here. Because what you don't want is what they call cadreism, sort of the ruling party, its apparatchiks, feeling that they can do whatever, but then the security forces will seem to be siding with them. That sort of thing that will really determine in many ways whether we're going to have a violent election or not. That will be a crucial central plank. We all know that when these things happen, you have criminals who have no interest in politics. They'll just join in the crowd and then use it to create whatever carnage or destruction that they want to create. And then people will begin to think that, oh, this party, that, or that party, they're doing this, they're doing that. So we should be careful, and it depends on how our security forces, how independently they will behave, perceived to be independent by others. That will play a crucial role.
That will be crucial. Yes, thanks for that. And I think that's a very valid point that you just made there. Now, at this point, we will take a quick break. And when we come back after this commercial break, we will have 5 more stories. So don't go away. See you after this break.
The best product in town is back. QCell's MiFi router. Get the best MiFi in the country for just $2,800 and connect up to 15 users with 4G internet speeds and a long-lasting battery life. So rush now to any of our customer care locations and get the best for less while stocks last. For more info, call our customer care on 111. QCell, Senior Boss, the Gambia's quality network. We innovate, others follow.
Welcome back after that commercial break. You're watching QTV and you're watching the Week in Review. I'm Ade Darami, and here with me, and we've gone through 5 stories already, is my colleague, Mr. Mboj. Mr. Mboj, thank you for your intervention so far.
Oh, my pleasure.
And as I always say at this juncture, if you missed the first bit, you missed 5 good stories, but that's no reason to switch off now, because guess what? 5 cracking stories still to come. Now, the next one, lots of young girls at school end up with their education interrupted and sometimes curtailed because of what? Something that is natural. They're on their period. Now somebody and an organization is doing something about it. Have a look.
From some telling me that they had to sell themselves, others using cow dung, animal skin, leaves, whilst some would sit on a hole for a week. Now the consequence of that is that girls will drop out of school, they will get married quite young, have babies, and that cycle of poverty persists.
There we heard Manjit K. Gill, founder of Binti Period. I think she's MBE as well. And she was talking, and I met her. I was quite impressed, because what she's trying to do is, this is something that young girls go through, and she's trying to get it on the school curriculum so that it's not some sort of taboo subject. It's the most natural thing, and yet people have been reluctant, mothers to their daughters, when they really should be having that conversation. So bring it to the schools and get them to talk about it, so everybody gets to understand what's happening and why it's happening. Sure.
Yes, you see the link between societal norms and institutions.
Yeah.
that sort of thing. Absolutely. Here we don't talk to our parents about our bodies, anything related to sex and with certain things. So it was quite interesting. Now we are integrating it. Let me just say this.
Yeah.
I did a bit of my high school in England. I was 14, 15.
Right.
We talked about wet dreams. We
Right.
talked about all sorts of things.
Right.
So before, around that period, you knew about it.
Yes, indeed.
So this is the link that's not here. Here you have some parents who are like that.
Yes,
There's a middle class that's like that. They talk to their children, their girls, especially about menstruation and the like, and they prepare you, and you can afford to buy pad. There's hygiene, sanitation, and all the rest of it. But you have a huge number that they just don't have that privilege conversation, if you like, with their parents. So introducing it in schools would help a lot.
And I'm glad to see about 2 or 3 weeks before, maybe a couple of weeks before, the First Lady went to somewhere where they were making reusable pads, which again is something that, for those who can't afford, the sort of disposable ones, they are reusable ones, and they've been proven in other parts of the world to be working and worthwhile. And now we have somewhere in the Gambia where they're producing it. So they're locally sourced as well. And we saw people being trained in how to produce it.
And that is the key to sustainability.
Sure.
So we should be producing it locally, and these reusable ones, because so many people really perhaps wouldn't be able to afford it.
That's right.
So that helps a lot. So in schools, I think the parent-teacher, these associations, should be meeting just more than once a year. It should be regular, so that what one is doing, the other is reinforcing. Yes. Imagine the school teaching doing one thing, and at home it's entirely different. Quite. So you're sending mixed signals, to this child. So that must be a vigorous, really solid relationship that must meet regularly and discuss to mutually reinforce for the benefit of the child. Really.
I think, as you said, for the benefit of the child. And so we wish Binti Period, as the organization is called, every success in that. Thank you, Mr. Mburj. Now on to something else, somewhat related. Every year in October, the world celebrates the Day of the Girl Child, including here in the Gambia. Have a look.
According to the United Nations, girls are more likely to be cut off, pointing to the gender divide within the digital divide. Speaking to Maimuna Jabi, co-founder High Tech and a climate change advocate, says equal opportunity should be given to girls. She explains how she maneuvers her way through the male-dominated field.
Technology has actually been made for girls. I was exposed to through tech camps that we used to do all countrywide, where we would train secondary school students on tech. I also got to love it, and it has helped me build a career in it now. So what I have to say is that we give digital tools to girls. So any girl that's given the opportunity, I believe, will be able to make most use of it, and they won't. It will also help minimize some of the risks we face even when we go out to work.
Day of the Girl Child. When we were discussing doing the story on Day of the Girl Child, somebody asked me in the office, why isn't there a Day of the Boy Child? And I had to then say, okay, I could give you lectures, but let me just take you to the website that tells you what the problems are that they're trying to address. And I referred him to a recent article on Afghanistan, where certain European Union governments, or governments that are in the European Union, are saying that the European Union will not deal with the Taliban unless they start allowing girls to go to school and so on. This is 2021. I said those are some of the things. There's no country I can think of where they say boys can't go to school. So an important day to celebrate, commemorate, and actually remind people of what it is we need to be addressing. Sure.
Absolutely. Well, I tend to tell people, I said, hey, look, for centuries, we were in charge doing all sorts of things. So now we cannot roll that back, you know, that sort of thing.
Right.
But now we want to rectify.
And people are asking for a level playing field.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
Already there's no
Because
level playing field.
Because, you know, we heard a young lady there talking about tech, and they've always said recently that tech is the great equalizer. It doesn't need muscle, it doesn't need, you know, if you have it up here and you can do it. And somebody who you're dealing with, unless they can see you, they don't know that you're a male or female. They just know you're good or you're not good.
Yes,
and so, you know, this is why there's a kind of a lot more emphasis on tech, and why they want young girls, particularly when they're at school, to get into tech and not think it's a man's world.
Absolutely. And for me, I was talking to somebody, I said, you see, with you people now, you wouldn't really be against positive discrimination in the US for black people. But you understand why it is needed. You know the centuries of suffering. Think about it with girls as well. That is exactly the stage that we've reached. For centuries, they were, you know, second class citizens. Didn't give them any opportunities, and still we see it here all the time.
That's right.
So that is really the reason why they've been prioritized now to pull them up.
Yeah.
Absolutely. They are so far behind, so we are helping them, you know, to pull them up. That is the reason we are doing these things.
That's
and
right.
yes, and we must commemorate it. We must keep on banging on about it. And their interest, there must be an equal consideration of interest.
Sure.
Absolutely. Never mind this boy, girl, this traditional view. Things have moved on. We must have the courage. You see, that was, I think, I did the Thomas Sankara story when he said that if you want to effect fundamental change, you must have the courage not to conform, the conformity, isn't it?
That's right.
Leave old formulas that have not worked. Have the courage to invent the future. We are inventing. So all these old arguments about boys, girls, the gender roles, they are now redundant.
Yeah, quite.
They are now completely redundant.
So, Day of the Girl Child, and of course our colleagues, Loli M. Kamara, Geneva Sonko, Ajibinto Drame, who were part of the news team, they always make sure that we're on point with this one. And we will always commemorate it anyway, because it's something that we believe in. But thank you for that, Mr. Mburj. Now, something else that the Gambia has that we can be very, very proud of. Talking about a molecular biology lab. Have a look at this.
Molecular biology lab was funded by the UK Research Institute at an estimated $200 million plus. The building has an office space that can host 280 staff, a laboratory capacity that can accommodate up to 100 lab technicians, equipped with smart technology for high volume of sample testing and tracking of disease outbreaks for quick response.
It would be difficult to find an equivalent building in terms of it being a smart build, the environment being under control, and the sheer footprint we have here. You know, it's about 800 square meters of laboratory space for molecular biology work.
The MRC Unit de Gambia at the London School of Health and Tropical Medicine is one of 2 research units established in sub-Saharan Africa by the Medical Research Council UK, which is its single largest investment in medical research in a low and middle income country.
Huge investment in a low and middle income country. Of course, we know the MRC. Now, routinely people talk recently about a vaccine for malaria, and MRC were very much at the forefront here in the Gambia in trying to find one 15 years ago or whatever it was. Well, molecular biology lab. When I saw and I heard the story, and I did take colleague Choi to task, I said the only one in the region. Actually, in the sub-region it is. There's a very good one that's doing similar work in Senegal, but it's not quite what this one will be doing. So it's really a huge props to the Gambia.
I mean, but again, MRC, they've been groundbreaking in so many different areas. They've been very crucial in research.
Sure.
It's just that we never publicize, as it were, what they do. Yeah. Instead, in fact, in the past, now I don't hear it so much, people have been so cynical about the MRC. Oh, what are they doing here? I don't trust them. Oh, this, these white people. That narrative.
Yeah, quite.
They've been doing wonderful things, and absolutely grand, fantastic. How can anybody, and the way they work, you can be confident. That.
Well, this is it. I mean, again, when I was speaking to Troy, I gave him the example. I said, if there was a, God forbid, an outbreak like Ebola, and they wanted to test, you don't have to send it to England or America, or in Sierra Leone's case, sent to Nigeria. You could send it here.
That is precisely the key. I think that's precisely the reasoning. I mean, that's who sponsored it, the UK Institute, Research Institute, and stuff like that.
That's right.
So know that, because right now we've had all these coronavirus families coming. So we're preparing. We know that in the future we're going to have more epidemics, pandemics. Everybody knows that.
That's right.
So they're preparing for something like that. So I can imagine Western governments, NGOs, agencies supporting, sponsoring stuff like this around the world.
Well, this is it. And you heard the scientists there talking about the huge footprint, the size of the facility, the fact that it can have up to 280 staff on site at any given time. And my colleague Troy, when he came back, he was knocked out and very impressed with what he saw, and they gave them a guided tour. And you said it, COVID and the likes and all these coronavirus family. We've been sitting here marveling about all the work that people are doing at Oxford University and so on. Guess what? It can be done here.
Absolutely, and it looks like it's for the region. It's really for Africa.
That's right. It's not just for the Gambia.
It's not just for the Gambia. It's just we are the hosts. But from the scale and then from what you have heard them say, it is really for Africa. And absolutely, why not? It's just a pity that it's always foreigners who would come and do these things. By now, we should have had lots of scientific research centers, as it were. People like Cabral and even Sankara knew that technique, science, the technical, was at the very heart of the colonization struggles. If it is not there, you're not moving much.
At all. As Cabral always said, we want to be so educated that nobody would dare say we can't run our own affairs. But that's kind of, extrapolate that. And he was very much somebody who believed in the importance of science, as you rightly say. So big props to the Gambia, and I think it's a plus for the sub-region, and it's a plus for Africa that we have such a facility here in the Gambia. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. Now, something completely different, but something that, again, Mr. Mboj and I are quite keen on, football. But this time, we're talking about Gambia's under-20 women. Have a look.
Reacting to the victory, Fode Ba, coach of the women's under-20 team, praised his team for their bravery in the match. He told GFF Media the girls gave their best.
These girls really make me proud. They've played very well. A very difficult game, a very good side, very good Burkina side. I think I've said it back home. Sometimes you lose games not because you didn't perform. You performed extremely well back home. Coming here to the second leg, we played extremely well.
The Gambia under-20 women's team now know their opponents in the next round of qualifying. They will face Morocco over 2 legs. The Moroccans eliminated Benin 4-3 on aggregate. 2 teams from Africa will qualify for the finals.
There you had the Gambia under-20 women's team. Mr. Mboj, it was good news, particularly in kind of less than thrilling news for the men when they went to their camp in Morocco, but we will deal with that later. This time we're talking about the under-20 women. And when they lost the first leg here, some, myself included, because I saw clips of the Burkina team, they look quite good. And I thought if they can come and win here, they can win at home. But that's not what happened.
Absolutely. We overturned it, equalized, and then went on penalties and we won. Fantastic. So, do we have a chance to qualify in the World Cup, the Under-20 Women's World Cup?
That's right.
So next we're facing what, Morocco? I wonder how good are they?
Well, I watched their game against Benin. They were okay. I mean, good attacking side. I think it was 4-3. So they let in goals, but they were good good attacking side, and they just edged it. But they look quite good, and I think they could be quite a handful, the Moroccan ladies.
Well, let's just go there and do our best.
Indeed.
Give them a good run for
absolutely.
them.
And one of the reasons I wanted to play this is because across the world now, I went on the FIFA website, they're really trying to get countries to encourage women's football. They're trying to encourage every major kind of industrial nation to have like a fully functioning and, where possible, fully professional women's league. Slowly it's happening. And here, the league is getting better. I remember when we had the postponement due to COVID-19, when the men's league came back, the women were still held back, and they protested, say, we're ready and we're raring to go, don't hold us back. But, success like this can only be, for the better, surely.
Absolutely, and that we tend to sort of privilege, the male team, sure, the men's teams, and that sort of thing. Perhaps for any women's team to go and do well.
That's it, yes.
When they do perform well, then perhaps that will form some kind of pressure.
Yeah. And particularly if they do well when they've not been over-resourced, meager resources, really. And
so that's it. So that would put the pressure on, to take them seriously and invest more in them, because we are getting more international recognition from them than from the men, if that should happen. So imagine that.
Yes, I mean with the men, if we can touch on them just briefly before we go on to our last story. It's a difficult one to weigh up, the camp in Morocco, because it was a training camp, and 3 friendlies, 7-2 defeat, a 2-1 defeat, and what was the last one? South Sudan, 2-1. 2 penalties we got, and then South Sudan replied late on. Fans of Gambian football, of which there are many and which seems to be most of the country, they weren't impressed. But is it the case that we should not be too depressed? Because after all, it was the coach tried certain formations and so on. Do we need to exercise patience?
That's precisely what I was about to say. With these friendlies, coaches are trying out things.
Yeah.
Really, I don't think it's really not about the results, is it? Because you're trying to figure out things, trying different combinations. Maybe you've got a hunch about something, then you're testing it out. So this is to fine-tune, to twig.
Sure. Yes, indeed.
Really, so I don't think I will really make much of it in many ways.
But not too good. But for the under-20 women, we wish you luck in the games against Morocco, and of course we hope you triumph. So, we'll be rooting for you. And now on to our final story. Again, a completely different story. Back in July, I think it was, the country was racked by violent windstorms. So recently it was Disaster Risk Reduction Day globally. Have a look.
Is, calling its partners to work together up to the community level in order to have strategies that will employ to reduce the impacts of disasters in this country. And we have learned lessons in previous years, but this year is a special year that we are able to achieve a lot in terms of coordination and partnering with our development partners to ensure that we build the resilience of our vulnerable communities. And currently the government has also invested a lot in terms of resilient building programs and activities. And equally during this process, we do ongoing sensitization to let the population know what are some of their key hazards and how are they going to prepare those hazards. In essence, also the agency has also strengthened the capacity of our national early warning system by supporting the Department of Water Resources and equally strengthening the early warning system of this agency, having our call center whereby the public can reach out to us in terms of disaster risk reduction.
I deliberately had that bit there about a call center, chap from the NDMA, National Disaster Management Agency, talking there about preparedness, which is what the day was all about, was telling countries to look at themselves and their preparedness for dealing with disasters. Mr. Mboj, are you encouraged by some of what you heard, none of what you heard there regarding, some of the plans for disaster risk reduction?
Yes, so when you hear preparedness, I'm wondering preparedness for what? Is it that when the disaster happens, then what do I do? Or managing risk?
Yes.
I think the emphasis is really here about managing risk. I mean, we've been having these yearly sort of rainstorms and, and floods and the like, and we see the sort of buildings that people build.
I was going to come to that. Yes, quite, yes.
Let's go back to simple things and enforce them. You see, we need that enforcement. This is where the issue is. So we can agree on all sorts of things, write them down, say we have this and this structure, they've got a call center, whether when I call the person will be there, that's something else.
Quite. But so because it's and you rightly said, risk reduction day.
Absolutely.
And so, again, at the risk of repeating myself, because I'd mentioned it in another context, when I went around during the recent disaster and I went to some of the places, I could pick up a brick that they'd used to build a house and it crumbled in my hands. It's not that I'm that strong, just that it was so weak. Those are some of the things that we need to be teaching people. If you're serious about wanting to protect yourself, don't think you're cutting corners or saving money, because look at the disaster that might befall you.
Absolutely, and not only that, of course I will tell you, we must know all of that, but I think the trick is to have a planning authority that will tell you, no, you cannot use this or you cannot use that.
Sure.
So without that planning authority, really being strict, being stern in what it does, people will always cut corners.
There you are, and cut corners at your peril. On that note, Mr. Mboj, sorry, it's a depressing note. Thank you so far for your interjection so far. And that brings us to the end of the program. And as ever, I want to say to the viewers, thank you for watching, and join us again next week. Until then, goodbye.